Welcome back. And today, the first thing I would like to point out is that when I've been playing these games for these videos on Madden, I have been selecting random weather. So, with that random weather, I got snow in San Francisco. So, looks good. So, we're keeping it. Alright, let's get right into it. Last season, the San Francisco 49ers went 13-3. My notes from last season start off with the blocking from the entire team is absolutely amazing. And that's why in the run game they were able to be so successful. The blocking was the key to all of it. I mean, there were just massive holes that these backs would go through, and that's why so many different backs were able to have success. But not only that, after receivers caught balls in the passing game, you'd see other receivers running up the field and throwing blocks for them as well. And that really helps the team out when your blocking is so successful. With the running game being so successful, the play action breaks off of the run were extremely successful as well. And that's obviously going to happen when you have that great of a run game. Next thing to take note of is the strong defensive front and the short yardage defense. Wow, it was incredible. I think they had 5 4th and 1 stops in one season. That's insane. And then they obviously had a lot of other short yardage defensive stops as well that didn't occur on fourth down, but 5 4th and 1 stops alone is insane. Uh, while watching back some of the stuff from last year, it's also nice to look at their all white throwback uniforms that they've sort of adopted as one of their like looks that they actually use consistently because the I just love how the black around the red numbers looks. I don't know why, just that font for the number schemes looks so cool. The pass rush isn't one guy, it's a swarm. Whenever you watch this defense play, it's like when they get after the quarterback, the whole team is getting after the quarterback. It's not just one guy winning his matchup. The team absolutely swarms the passer, and it looks great. Also, Bosa, Warner, and Eric Armstead. I mean, NFL players are freak athletes, but those three are just insane athletes, especially for the sizes they come in on. They come in at. And next thing, now shifting over to an offensive point. Debo Samuel last year. I don't know if I was looking at that pick like I loved it last year at this time, but now, after looking back at what he did last season, I definitely think 49ers fans should be happy with what they got in Debo Samuel. And the playmaker is just getting the ball in his hands at all. He was great receiving, but also just getting the ball at all. Every single player on this team also runs really hard. Like if whether it's Kittle, any of the 18 different running backs they have, Kyle Juszczyk, Debo Samuel, as I mentioned, all the receivers, everybody's running hard. This team just seems like it's a group of guys that you would really, if you got to know, you'd really root for them. Next up is you look at their D line and you see D Ford, Nick Bosa, and Eric Armstead, and I didn't rate any of those guys in any specific order, but they traded a D lineman for a first round pick this offseason, being DeForest Buckner. And all I can think is that they actually just traded their fourth best D lineman for a first round pick. Or whatever they ended up trading to move their picks into the first round. I'm just going to call it a first round pick though. And that's pretty insane when they've already got that much talent on the D line and they add him, or sorry, they lose him, but it doesn't matter because they add Javon Kinlaw in the draft, and I'll get to that later. But they also have a guy by the name of Solomon Thomas who was a top 3 pick 3 years ago. He could break out if he had enough opportunities. Who knows? I mean, they picked him that high. They must have thought he was talented, and he's still only 24 years old. He could, if he got going, and Javon Kinlaw, that D line is insane already. Imagine if they got another guy going. The next thing is that interesting that all the successful backs they had in the backfield, they decided to trade one of the younger ones. And they traded Matt Breida, and I thought that was interesting that they traded one of the younger ones because him and Jeff Wilson last season were tied for the youngest running backs on the team. It may have had something to do with Matt Breida just getting the best offer from another team, and that's why they chose to trade him. But I thought it was interesting that they chose one of the younger backs to trade. Here was just a fun point that I noticed when I was looking at their stats. Raheem Mostert had 0 kick returns last season, but lost 19 yards on those. 49ers fans probably know how that happened, but I just think that's funny. Uh, then looking at their secondary, there's no big names in it besides Sherman, but with that pass rush and how quick they get after the quarterback, if those guys can just play tight coverage for a short period of time, this team has success, and I think that is where they saw a lot of their success last year. Also, I don't know why, I just love watching Jimmy Ward play. Jimmy Ward is a very fun player to watch. Next up, let's look a little bit at who got injured on their team last year. Now, they were the Super Bowl runner-ups, so you can't say that they were very injured, but actually they have some guys on this list that missed significant portions of time. These are the guys that I listed that actually missed most of the season. That was Trent Taylor, Jason Verrett, Jalen Hurd, and Jerick McKinnon. You completely forget that Jerick McKinnon is a running back on this team just because of already all the guys they have. If he comes back and is successful, I mean, it's just crazy. They've already got plenty of talented runners, so that would just add more to the mix. Then they got Jalen Hurd last year in the draft. Now, I was surprised with how well Deebo Samuel played, so if he plays well too, that would be a nice combo of receivers to get last year. We'll see how he does, though. I just had to mention him because he was a rookie last year and he didn't get to play. Jason Verrett at one point when he came into the league, he felt like a top-tier corner. I don't know, he kind of fell off, but not being able to play most of last season, I'd like to see what he's able to do if he can get on the field this season, if he even earns a starting role or something. And then Trent Taylor really felt like he was coming on as a receiver, but he got injured last year, so that changed a few things. And then Quan Alexander did play. I think it was like he played more than half the season, I think, but he missed a decent amount of time too, so I'll just mention him quick. He could have even more of an impact this season if he's able to play the whole year instead of missing a decent number of games. Now, let's go into who they gained this offseason. They acquired Joe Walker, a linebacker from the Cardinals, who I actually don't know much about, but I've heard the name before, and I think he's a decent player, so I'll mention him. He's on here. They've already got decent linebackers, though. We'll see how he does. Travis Benjamin, once again, another player who at one point was pretty talented, but has seen a recent drop-off. If they can get him back to a successful state, that would be nice for them. And Trent Williams was acquired. But he's kind of a piece that is interesting because now, talking about losses, they lost Joe Staley. And Trent Williams basically just becomes the Joe Staley replacement, honestly. I'm not sure whether it's an upgrade or a downgrade, but both of them are elite left tackles. And you have to think that even if there is a drop-off, it wouldn't be significant. But Joe Staley is now retired, and good luck to him in the future. They also lost Emmanuel Sanders. He got signed away from them. And obviously the DeForest Buckner trade, Matt Breida trade, and Marquise Goodwin is now gone to the Eagles, I think for cap reasons. So they lose 2 receivers, left tackle that was immediately replaced, a running back, but they have 4,000 running backs, defensive linemen, but they have replacements, and they lost 2 receivers. But they're getting 2 receivers back that were out the entire year last year. The running back room is loaded. The left tackle is replaced by Trent Williams. And then in the first 2 rounds of the draft, first at pick 14, they pick Javon Kinlaw, the defensive tackle from South Carolina. Holy cow. This guy was one of those guys that when he's on the field, he just seems like a game wrecker, at least in the college level. Maybe not as immediate in the NFL, but he seems like a steal at pick 14. And then at pick 25, they picked Brandon Ayuk, a wide receiver from Arizona State. So you gotta, you like that. You like to see the defensive tackle and then the wide receiver to replace DeForest Buckner, Emmanuel Sanders, and Marquise Goodwin. But the one gripe I have with this is that I see CD Lamb on the board at pick 14, or even Jerry Jeudy. Both of them were there. I think if you're thinking of going wide receiver in the first round and then defensive line later, I think that this isn't a terrible mistake, but I think CD Lamb is so talented that they should have grabbed him at 14. And then they still could have went defense at number 25 if they wanted to. I don't think Kinlaw would have still been there, but I think they went the wrong way for that. However, this team is so talented already, obviously being to the Super Bowl last year, that it doesn't seem like you can really fault them for it. I mean, with everything I just said, they filled all their holes. And then in the 5th round, they drafted a tackle from West Virginia who was probably picked just because they weren't sure the Trent Williams trade was going to go through, so they needed to draft him for when Joe Staley retired. Then they picked a tight end in the 6th round. I don't think much of him, honestly. I don't know. And then they got a receiver in the 7th round named Juwan Jennings. He kind of plays like Brandon Marshall, so I don't know if he's going to be anything special. I doubt he will be, but like a player comparison, he really reminds you of Brandon Marshall. He's wearing the number 15 at Tennessee, and you like him. By the way, I don't know if that's Juwan. I'm assuming the way the name's spelled that is Juwan. But now, let's talk about their opponents that they'll be playing in 2020, because that's how we really predict their record. Okay, let's start by looking at the same thing we look at first every time. Their divisional opponents. We got the Rams, Seahawks, and Cardinals both home and away. Now, all three of those teams are very quality opponents. And before I said that in the Rams and in the Seahawks video, I said both of those teams would split those games 3-3 and 3-3. I think the 49ers are better than that, though. So I think the 49ers, however, these games are still tough, so I don't think they're going to go 6-0 with them. I think they'll either go 5-1 or 4-2. Now, after that, I'm going to say one of those games could go either way. So if they go 5-1 or 4-2, then I'll talk about some opponents that they obviously will beat next year. They go to the New York Jets. I think they'll win there. They go to the New York Giants. They'll win there. They'll go to New England. I think they'll win there. Okay? Now, here's some home games that I think they'll have that'll be easy games. They've got Miami at home. I think that'll be an easy one. They've got the Washington Redskins at home. I think that'll be an easy one as well. And then they've got the Green Bay Packers. And even though they played the Green Bay Packers in the NFC Championship game last year, I don't think that team is anyone to be scared of. So I'm going to say that they're going to easily beat them too at home. They've got my Buffalo Bills at home. Sadly, I really don't see my Bills going in there and holding together against a solid team like this. So I'll give them that win too. All right. Now, who do we got left? We got the Cowboys on the road. They'll go to Dallas. The Saints, they'll go there. The Eagles, they'll play the Eagles at home. I could see them losing any of those 3 games. However, I don't think it'll be most of them. Or I don't think it'll be even 2 of them. I think they'll only lose 1. I think they'll lose 1 to either Philadelphia, Dallas, or New Orleans. And I look at it more now, and I see the divisional opponents again, since I never really confirmed anything with that. Cardinals, Seattle, and LA. I can't even see them losing 2 games to them. I'm going to say they're going to win. They're going to beat the NFC West 5 out of 6 times. They'll go 5-1 against their division, and I'd say they'll drop one more game, either to New Orleans, Dallas, or Philadelphia. I don't know which, but I think a 14-2 record for this San Francisco team, based off what we saw last season, is actually a fairly doable thing. Now, I don't like predicting 14-2 because 14-2 is such, that's, it's not perfection, but 14-2, 14-2 in the NFL is near perfection, and that'll be a pretty hefty task for them. But with how talented the team is and the turnover that they had, to make sure that they didn't lose any key pieces, and maybe even by gaining back some of those guys that were injured last year, you could see it. So once again, they'll beat the Bills, they'll beat the Packers, they'll beat the Redskins, beat the Dolphins, beat the Patriots, beat the Giants, beat the Jets. I think they'll win all their NFC West home games too. So they'll beat the Rams, Seahawks, and Cardinals. I think they'll beat the Cardinals on the road. I think the only games within the division they may lose is in LA against the Rams or in Seattle against the Seahawks. And then we've got the last 3 games again, which is the Saints, Cowboys, and Eagles. I think they'll drop one of them. I don't know which it'll be, but I think they're talented enough to win 2 of them, but those are 3 tough games, and I think they'll lose one of them. So I think the 14-2 record makes sense here, just with how talented the roster is and the amazing turnover, like I said. So, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.
And the fair catch is made at about the 27-yard line. They call it 38 yards on the punt, no return. And it'll be Seahawk football, 1st and 10. Wilson, the Seahawks take over now, 1st and 10 at their own 27. Boy, nowhere to go at all on that 1st down run as they will get to him behind.